Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. I'm your host, Julie Fairhurst, and today I'm with a fellow Canadian, Bernice McDonald. So I'm happy we were chatting about the weather in Canada. So it was good. We were bonding there over the weather. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a life strategist, an author, and speaker who helps midlife women move from feeling not enough to becoming brave enough one tiny step at a time. She's also the author of the Little Books of Courage series, which includes Brave Enough to Be Myself, Brave Enough to Let Go, and I love this title, Brave Enough to Stop Disappearing. Her work reminds women that courage is not about being fearless, it is about moving forward while your knees are still shaking, your heart is tender, and your hope is still learning how to stand. So, welcome, Bernice. Thank you so much for being here.
Wonderful to be here, Julie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, let's just dive right in there. So, what led you to become a life strategist and create Tiny Brave Steps?
I have been a coach for 22 years.
Wow.
Not working full-time coaching all that time, but in my heart, always a coach. I got my certification about 22 years ago, and then right after I went through a divorce. So of course, then I had to go and support myself. So I got a job, but I had a job with our health system, Alberta Health Services, in addiction and mental health, which really supported my coaching learning. It really fed into that. So over time, I did relationship coaching because I thought, hey, I just came out of a divorce. I'm not really up to coaching, but I can take more courses to train myself how to have a good relationship because obviously I was a little lacking in that area. So I started to I coached on the side. I had an office for a while, and then as I went along, I realized, I was learning so much just from the whole arena of coaching, so much from Tony Robbins and from other thought leaders that I was devouring their stuff. And also the whole in between time between my marriages, total learning, sharp learning curve. And out of that, I realized how afraid I was of so many things and how I had been feeling not enough my entire life, pretty
Mm.
much. I was raised in a home that was very loving, but also along with that, what I was raised in a church where the standards were really high. And it wasn't that I didn't believe in what the church was teaching us, but those were the days when the rules were really strict. And I began to feel like I could not be good. I just felt like a bad girl. And,
Oh,
I just couldn't get it right. And I think all of that fed into that not enough feeling. And so as I developed my coaching and I finished my career at Alberta Health Services, I wanted to go back into coaching, but the landscape had kind of changed. So I signed up for another training course, and there I realized that really the heart of what I wanted to do was to talk about courage and about how women, especially, and especially in midlife, often lose their nerve. They don't believe they're enough to be anything more than just kind of that person that ages and goes off into the sunset, and wishes they maybe would have acted on some things before. So
yeah.
I began to out of that just I tried to get the coaching clientele, but the landscape had changed. It was hard to get clients. And so I thought I'm going to leave a legacy of some kind. So I'm going to write 10 little books of courage because at least then I'll have it in written word. I'll be able to put my heart onto paper and be able to talk about each book is a courage block. And so I began to develop those books. I only got to three, and now I'm writing my signature book, which I should have written first. But what did I know, right? So that's kind
Wow.
of how the whole system has fallen into place. And as I wrote the books, I realized I was developing a framework. And so from there, this is how I got to the place where I have a method I now call the Tiny Brave Steps methodology.
So what does that mean, and why do small steps matter so much when someone might be feeling fear or being feeling like they're stuck?
Yeah, I love this question because I always picture it like you're standing at the edge of a cavern, deep cut cavern. On the other side is that person or that future that you want to have, whether it's a business, whether it's, it's that vision we all carry about a different life or a better life. That cavern represents the gap between us and where you get to. And if you try to leap that cavern, it's just like if you're out climbing in the mountains and you come across a cavern, unless you're in the movies, and do have a stunt double or something, you don't leap across a cavern. You build a bridge. And so building a bridge happens one little step at a time. And our brains, which I'm all about, our brains actually work better if we take small steps. So, we take a portion of the bridge we want to build, but even there, we break it down into small steps because the smaller the step, the less likely you are to go into that flight or fight. And, fear kicks in and begins to tell you, hey, this is too scary. And many of us, when we feel that feeling, we hear that voice in our head that says, look what happened last time when you tried it. Or,
Yes.
you are going to fail. You're going to fall into that cavern and you're going to look like an idiot. How many times those thoughts come to us if we try to take too big a step? And so we break it down into small pieces so that every step counts. Every step is a step toward where you want to go. And every step then becomes evidence that, hey, I was brave enough to take that step. I can take the next step. And so that's why tiny brave steps are golden. And I should mention too that brave part.
Yeah.
You need to make it something that stretches you a little bit so that you are not, just doing, administration work that comes easy to you. You need to also realize that within that step, if you can just get yourself a little bit into that discomfort zone, it becomes more meaningful. It becomes a deeper feeling that you are actually moving forward. So
Mm,
hence the name, Tiny
yeah.
Step.
Oh no, I love the name. I think the name is perfect for what you're, especially when you're explaining it like this. Well, how did you come to understand courage?
I was very scared
Mm, mm,
over everything. Um, you know, I I began okay, really it happened in that 6 year period between my marriages because I don't know if this is odd, but I was in a 24-year marriage that was, full of a lot of things that were not positive. And
mm,
when I came out of that marriage, I decided I really want to find love at least one time, real love, one time in my life. And so that was really my horizon, right? That was on the other side of the cavern, huge cavern. I had a lot to learn. My bridge had many steps in it. So, but part of it was I had to date, right? I
Oh,
had to get
yes.
back out
Yes.
in that world of dating. That was scary. But I had this, what you always have to do is find something that is more important than the fear you're feeling, you know.
Mhm.
So I thought, if I want to ever find that love, I'm going to have to take the steps. I'm going to have to date. So I was following a coach who was saying her whole program was have the relationship you want, which directly appealed to me very much. But one thing she said to me that I will never forget, she said, when you get out there dating, you're going to have fear. Fear is going to show up. Now you have a decision to make at that point. And she said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take that fear and I want you to shrink it down to this little guy that you can look right in the eye, separated from yourself. You look him in the eye and you say, thank you so much for trying to protect me. I know that you want to protect me, but what I want you to do is go over there in the corner and eat a cookie because I need to go out and do this. I have somewhere to go and I'm going to have to take this step if I'm going to get there. I will hear you chattering away over there. I know you're worried, but I need to be the boss and I need to
Mm,
go forward. And so that's where I began to understand that courage doesn't mean that you don't feel fear. Courage means that you have the ability and the determination to take the step anyway, even when you feel afraid. So
mm.
that was the journey.
Yeah. I thought because you talk about your little dragon named Fred, and I thought, oh, she's going to introduce Fred, but that wasn't Fred who you told to go have a cookie.
Yes, it was.
Oh, it
That
was
was
Fred.
Fred. Yes.
Oh, oh,
Eventually, well, I heard about him from that coach, but then I also read a while ago a book by Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic. And in there, she also looks at fear in the same way. And she said that fear keeps so many creators from actually doing what they want to do. They're afraid to put
yes.
their work out there in the world, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she was saying, she wrote a letter to her fear. And she said, um, thank you, fear, for trying to protect me. Basically, this is my way of my wording. But she said, and I'm going to invite you along for the ride because I know you will always be with me. So you can come in the car and you can ride with me, but you will never be driving. And so, with my vivid imagination, I'm seeing this little dragon now beside me in the passenger seat or in the back seat,
Yeah.
chattering away because he's worried about so many things. And I just I had this image of fear being this huge dragon flying around
Mm,
my brain, always
yeah.
shutting me down and cautioning me. And I always thought it meant stop, you're in danger. But I didn't realize that, fear also can mean you feel discomfort. So the same feelings come up as if you're going to fall off a cliff. But you have to discern whether those feelings are about, are you going to die? Or are you just going into something that you feel uncomfortable about, So um, that became my Fred image, and I shrunk him down. I named him Fred because then he was, just this cute little guy, picture as a Disney character. I could talk to him, and now he's more of a companion. He's more a friend that's with me all the time and warns me, but he's almost like an advisor. He's more of
Mm,
an advisor. It's like when I feel fear, I know something's going on. I know I'm relating to something, I'm thinking something, I'm thinking of a past incident. I'm afraid something's going to happen. And so I pay attention and I start to look deeper. And so Fred becomes more like, okay, thanks, Fred. I appreciate this. So I'm going to think this through. There's obviously something going on here, and I need to decide whether, this is where too, like when you think of yourself as the boss, you're really giving yourself an identity, somebody who's in control of your life. When you're allowing fear to control you, your identity, fear is the thing that's bigger than you in your life. So now, what I tell people to do, and something I do all the time, is I ask myself, who do I want to be here? Do I want to be the person who's over here cowering because of the fear? Or do I want to be the warrior woman who goes forward, or the person who doesn't give up, or the person who believes in what I'm doing? If I choose that identity, then my step comes out of that. persona.
Yeah. I I love Fred. I'm going to get me a Fred.
You should.
I'm gonna, and I absolutely love that when you're talking about, because we go into, I've had several ladies who talk about, going to networking meetings and how terrified they are the very first time they go, and but being able to say, okay, who do I want to be here?
Yeah.
I love that, love it. Can you tell me, why do you think women disappear from their own lives, especially in midlife?
I think conditioning in many ways. Like we have been given the idea that, and I know I learned it partly from observing my mom and my aunts, and who they were in that generation. And I mean, they were so talented and so creative, but they were women who knew their place. They were,
Mhm.
the good wife, the homemaker, and the creativity in them, other than crocheting and creating in that way, really wasn't allowed to shine. And I felt so sorry because I had an aunt who was an awesome storyteller. She would have written amazing books, but she just didn't have the courage to do that. And so I think we get to a certain age and we start to think, I'm done. Okay, from here on in, I just get old, and so there's no room for me out there in the
Mm.
world if I past 60. When I'm 60, and you look at our work culture too, a lot of times we start to feel, well, 65 is that golden retirement age, right? And we associate retirement, we're getting better now, but many of
Yes.
us, retirement was a scary thing because we thought that that meant we were just going to sit, watch our favorite TV shows, maybe do a little volunteering, work on a craft. That doesn't feel very purposeful to us. And so I think we start to sort of shrink ourselves until we're these little old ladies.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that that's definitely where it was, and I agree. I think that society, women, we have realized that there's another phase.
Yeah.
I'm in that next phase. There's
Yeah.
I know many of those, many women who have gone to that next phase. And I think it's understanding that we have so many gifts because we've lived life and
Yeah.
we have those gifts that we can share, whether those are books or podcasts or whatever it is. So I'm curious, you walked on fire and you went ziplining to prove you were brave enough. So
Yeah.
take us there. What did that moment really mean for you?
Well, by the time I met my second husband, I had worked through a lot of things. I had gone from this desperate woman who was afraid of everything to realizing that I could choose. I could choose my life. I could protect myself. I could set my boundaries, all of that sort of thing. So I felt like I was ready to do some brave things. So I made the mistake. It really wasn't a mistake. But when my husband and I were dating, I said we talked a lot about philosophy and about how we wanted our life to look from here on in. And I said, I want to do some things that bring out my courage. And so I thought, I've never been brave enough, but it's always been kind of in the back of my mind. I want to go whitewater rafting. It's just something I've always thought would be fun to do. Well, if he didn't just go out and book us tickets at Grand Cache, which is a bit south of here in the mountains, on a very rapidy river, and
Yes.
and he said, "Okay, we're booked, we're going." And so I was petrified, but that was kind of my first experience of leaving Fred in the car where he was chattering away and I could feel the fear, but I thought the only way I'm going to get through this is to actually take the steps. And so I took the small steps. I got out of the car, closed the door, And I walked into the pavilion where they were training us. We put on our gear. They taught us everything. I went out with the crowd and just kept walking, got into the raft and went on the trip, and it was so beautiful. I not that I wasn't afraid at first, but I
Yeah.
realized I could relax into it and I didn't die. So then we started looking for other opportunities. So we went to a Tony Robbins event, and at Tony Robbins' first seminar that he holds, it's Unleash the Power Within. And we went to
Yes.
California, which also was a dream of mine to actually go to his 5 day thing.
Ah,
But on the first day at midnight, he has all of these beds of coals laid out. And he trains you all day to anticipate that and to set your fear aside and to do walk on this fire. I wasn't going to. But by the time I got out there, it's like I said to my husband, and he just it was nothing to him. He wanted to do it. So I
yeah.
said, I don't think I'm going to. I'll go with you out there, but then I'll meet you on the other side somehow. So we went up to the bed of coals and he went across, just plunk, 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 plunk. And it was quite long. And so then they're right in my face because they have
Oh,
these cheerleaders there saying, you can do this. Say yes. And I'm going, no, I don't want to do this. He said, say yes. And I looked at the coals and I thought, well, they've kind of died down. Maybe it won't be so bad. Well, here, while I'm standing there, they bring this fresh wheelbarrow full of hot coals and refresh that whole bed. So there they were, the hottest coals they could be. And so I listened to them saying yes, yes, and I thought, I'm just going to do it. And it was such a life lesson. I just put my foot out, the first foot on those hot coals, and then the next and the next, and I went right across and I did it. And the feeling at the end was just incredible.
wow.
It was like, I did this. I can do anything. Like that's kind of the feeling you
Yeah.
get. And so we did that with zip lining, where I'm terrified of heights. Actually, on Vancouver Island, we went to a zip line place. We went to the highest roller coaster in West Edmonton Mall. We were there once, and it was an indoor roller coaster that's just like the biggest in the world kind of thing. You're probably familiar with it. And we stood there one day when we were there visiting, and we said, okay, let's do it. And so we bought tickets and we went on that thing. Never again would I ever go on that again. It was so terrifying. But the thing is, every time I did that, I
Mhm.
came off feeling like I hardly recognize myself. I am able to do hard things.
Yeah.
And now when I face hard things, I look back and I remember that I did those things. And I
Yeah.
thought, same with my two babies I had, I thought, if I can do that, I can do this. And so it, really became
I
evident.
yeah, I think and as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, well, it's a building, isn't it, of courage? I mean,
Yes.
courage is like anything. We have to like self-esteem and anything we have to build. We have to learn it, and we
Yeah.
get better at it and better.
Yes.
And yeah. Can I ask you, were those coals hot? Like I know they were hot, but did they burn your feet?
No, I had one little burn on my baby toe that was barely anything. It stung a little when I got off, but no, I don't know how that happens. You get no burns on your feet and you come
Yeah.
off and like I think that also is a life lesson because when you're doing the hard thing, you have all these thoughts about how it's going to hurt you, how you're going to fail, how
Yeah.
even if you do fail, that you're going to be so humiliated. But when you actually get in there, after you put your foot out and take that first step, you often discover that it was your fear that was telling you how bad it was going to be. And really, the
Ah,
reality of it is that it's not that bad. You can
mhm,
handle it, you face
mhm.
it, and actually can get pretty excited about doing it in the
Yeah.
end.
Wow. Well, you work with women who are facing loss, change, and disappointment. So, how do you help someone find hope when they cannot see the path yet?
Well, and I take them through now. I actually have a couple of women's groups that I have on Zoom that I work with. One of them I call Creative Spaces because they come and we talk about how courage in the beginning, and then we just all work together for an hour. And they do something that contributes to reaching their horizon, to getting across to that other horizon. So, and then I have another group called the Tiny Brave Way. And that is where we go more in depth. Now, what these women bring is an actual situation. They're looking at their horizon and they're looking at themselves on the other side of the cavern and they're saying, okay, this is what I'm afraid of. And that's, you know, often a wall comes up between us and what we want to do. So, what we practice doing is, first of all, facing your fear because you wake up your courage when you actually can say, oh, this is fear talking, and admit that and see it for what it is. Understand the statement that's coming at you that's saying you are so afraid. Then what we do is look inside and go not to what's outside, but rather who we are. And, you know, when I look back to walking on those coals and doing those things, I say, you know, I am an adventurous woman. I'm not afraid of facing a challenge. And so we come up with that identity that can and has done hard things. And then from there, we stand up for that person. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, if this is you, then you need to be that person. You need to defend that person. You need to be okay with being that person. And so you need to let her come out more. And then from that identity, we come up with those tiny, brave steps that are not intimidating. They are challenging a little bit, but they're doable. They're doable steps. And as you probably know, the only way to get to a big goal is to take the steps.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what does it mean to be brave enough to be myself?
Well, you know, I mean, it's kind of like the whole disappearing thing, right? This is a huge barrier. And I think it's a barrier, really, I call that book, even though it's a very simple book, lots of white spaces, lots of thought bubbles, you know, in there. But I call it my heart on paper because it really was where I wanted to start because I was always afraid to be myself. You know, think of that cavern, that, you know, being on the other side, either something that you want to do or be. Often we put a picture of somebody else over there, somebody we admire and respect,
Mm.
somebody that we're measuring ourselves against. We put that person over there on that side of the cavern. And it really is not very inspiring because, you know, we think we have to become that person in order to be successful or in order to actually feel good about ourselves. We need to, like, who we are doesn't measure up to the standards that we've put in place. We need to just scrap all of that. And instead, what we need to do is find our own hearts, to look at our own strengths. And often I call them strange jewels. They're the things inside of us that are absolutely beautiful and absolutely the thing that we've been given from the time we were born to help us walk this path that we're on and to encounter all the hard things that we do. Yours is not the same as anybody else's. It's
Mhm.
your special jewel. So
Yeah.
the whole quest in that book is to find the courage to say, this is who I am, and I love it. And to be good with that so that you can go and make the impact that you're meant to make in the world.
Yeah. Great. That's good. That was a good one. Yeah, it's so deep and deeply ingrained in so many of us.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So what would you say to a woman who's listening, who feels afraid, overwhelmed, and like she's waited too long?
Yeah, that is, those are very common thoughts that we have, right? I would
Hmm.
say, first of all, and I have this tool I call ACT, because action is always the way to face uncertainty. So, first of all, acknowledge that this is fear and it's very normal and it's okay. And it's probably telling you something because something happened in the past and you're afraid that's going to happen again. So, then comes the identity step, which is like claim who you want to be. Ask yourself now, if I'm on my deathbed, who do I want to have seen looking back? What regrets do I not want to have? Who do I want to be here? And really think that through. Like, what kind of a person do I want them to be remembering at my funeral? I know it's morbid, but it's still a very effective thing. A lot of coaches use it. A lot of good, deep thought leaders encourage you to do that. And then when you understand who you want to be, pay attention to that. Don't let everybody else. The other question you need to ask is, who tells me who I am? Does that woman across the cavern that I'm imagining I need to be, does she get to tell me who I am in my lifetime? No, I get to decide that. And maybe you believe that God made you, so it's only us two that get to decide who we are. This is the
Yes.
way I'm made. This is how I am. And
Yeah.
then from there, start to take steps. Create a horizon for yourself. Think of a dream you've been burying. Think of something that you've always wanted to do and never have. Start there and start taking those tiny, brave steps, just little ones that start to open that door. You know, Research that thing you want to do. Write down a plan. Write down the first step of the plan and then take that step. Just get yourself moving and become the person you want to be.
Yeah. Tiny steps are just so important in everything we do in life. I know I remember in my other career that I had many years ago that things would kind of be stagnant, but as soon as I started, okay, I need to do something, even though I can't do the things that actually make me money because that's not happening at the moment. I'm going to do something else in my business. And I always found that as soon as I start to take that action, even if it's something minor, all of a sudden the momentum gets started. It's like we're stagnant when we're just sitting and we're not and we're waiting or we're frozen.
Isn't that true? It's so true. You have to, the only way is to actually push yourself forward, even if it's just a small way, because
Yeah.
then the courage shows up. If you wait for the courage to come or for the fear to go away, that will never happen. You need to do it while you feel the courage in some small way as you know, it's like you putting a stake in the ground saying, this is who I am. I'm
Yeah.
going to move forward. And
Yeah.
so, wherever that leads you, it'll open up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want women to know about fear that they may not have been taught?
Well, there is a quote, I don't know if you've ever heard it, by Ambrose Redmoon. It's been reinvented in many ways, but it's one that I held on to many years ago. And it goes like this: Courage is not the absence of fear, which we've heard a lot, but rather the judgment that something is more important than the fear. So when you face fear, the thing is to stop and ask yourself, if I don't do this, what's going to happen? If I let fear stop me, will I regret it tomorrow or next week at the end of my life? Will I regret it? And I think it like that's making the judgment that something matters more than that fear that you're feeling. It's really fear, like I said, it's trying to protect you. It's a built-in mechanism in our brain that just wants to keep you safe. And the easiest way to stay safe is to not do anything at all, right? But
Yes.
that makes life pretty boring and pretty non-adventurous, and you just shrink away. That's where the shrinking happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I have just loved this conversation, Bernice. It's so important. As you're talking, I'm thinking of people that I know and they're afraid to get online and they're afraid to be visible and all of those kinds of things. And I just know that this conversation is really going to help some folks out there, uh, especially women. Especially
Oh,
women. Men are lucky. They're just like a deer in the headlight. They just,
I
off they go, right? But we're like, oh, well, what if? Oh, somebody sees me.
know.
Oh my goodness. We're just yeah, yeah, we have that, and it's important to try to overcome it. And I just appreciate you so much for all your wisdom that you've been willing to share. I
Mm.
want everyone to know that we're going to have Bernice's information in the show notes. So you will be able to reach out to her if you want to join one of her groups, or you want to chat with her, or you want to grab a book. But she looks like she's got some great resources that can help. So don't be afraid. Just get out there and do it. So, Bernice, I have a closing question for you. If there's one message you want every woman listening to carry with her today, what would that message be?
It would be to really know she's here for a reason. There's a purpose. And everything inside of her matters. It's not weird. It's not just because she's not like the next person does not make her unacceptable or not enough. She has a person inside of her that needs to impact the world, however big her world is, in the way that she's gifted to do. And she needs to look for that and use it and embrace it.
Ah, thank you for that. Very inspirational. Thank you for that. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, well, I wish we could just sit here and continue to talk, but we can't. So unfortunately. So, well, thanks again, Bernice. I appreciate you being so honest and forthcoming. I have always wanted to attend a Tony Robbins weekend or 5 days or whatever it is he's got going on. And you got me thinking I'm going to start to
I
see.
think so. Highly
Yeah.
recommend it. It's
Yeah.
empowering.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And to all of you, thank you for being here for this episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. And we will see you all again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.